Hello, and welcome to Making Creativity Pay, the podcast where we talk to people in creative industries about how they promote and market their work. I'm Dan Barnett, and on this episode I spoke with Ashley Catherine Dick, founder of film company Cinora. We talk about how she got into filmmaking, how video and film differ, and some of the things she's created, including Cinora's short film The Boulder, and the Glasgow version of Subway Takes called Clockwork Orange Takes. I started by asking Ash to give a quick introduction about Cinora.
So I run Cinora, which started out as a project and now is a full-blown production company. And this really came from there not being enough opportunity for creatives in Scotland to make film. So that's the aim of the company. We facilitate that to happen, but we're also educating people on how to DIY their own film projects, how to get into the professional space. We have tools, digital products, we also have physical products that are all designed to help filmmakers do what they need to do. And we're looking to grow. We're looking to make the community and the industry in Scotland more sustainable and basically grow the film community that's here.
So how long has Cinora, as it currently stands, been going?
We started in May 2024, so it's been about a year and a half, just under.
There's the three of you now involved, so you've got a couple of other people working with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I say we started, it was technically just myself, but my partner is a graphic designer, so he really stepped up and took on all of the look and feel of it, which has given it this real professional vibe, you know. Something that I definitely had filmmaking in the bag, but coming up with logos and motifs and tone of voice and things like that was all him. And he built the website. He's come up with a lot of the things that people love, like our stickers and our little pin badges. And it kind of snowballed from there. This year, we stepped up a level with our digital products, and that's allowed us to have the income to employ people. So now we have a small team. We have a production assistant, a camera operator, and also an editor. And we're all constantly working on content to help filmmakers. And then, of course, we have our bigger productions, which we employ lots of freelancers to help make.
How have you found it, both as a small business in general, and then obviously in film? Being a small business in anything is hard.
Yeah.
In something like film is even harder. Have there been a lot of challenges that you've had to kind of go through?
Oh, yeah, definitely. One of the biggest challenges is just that when you're starting out, and even now, I still need to be doing lots of work in order to keep myself going, in order to keep the overhead, to keep your career afloat. And as much as I want to just sink all of my time every week into Cinora and working on those projects, it is not yet in a feasible place where we're making that much that it's like the main focus. And so that's really hard because, I've got my main vocation is as an editor. And so I have got edits all week and I've got other projects that I'm doing, and I'm constantly kind of like, oh, but there's this thing I absolutely have to submit, otherwise Soronora's like not in the running for that. Or just like finding the right opportunity to invest your time. So the big challenges are that time is finite and so is money. So I'm always fighting that battle of like, where am I spending what? And that's where like bringing people onto the team has really helped. So though Cinora wasn't in a place where I could leave all of my editing work behind, do this full time and have enough for our creative projects, I was able to go, you know what, I could pay someone a couple of days a week to do this particular job. And that would take that off my plate and allow me to do more. So yeah, that is the biggest struggle of running this.
And in terms of support, again, just as a small business and also in the creative industries, is there much, both in terms of UK support and in particular in Scotland?
So I've not been able to tap into any financial support for Cinora so far, although I am preparing it to pitch for investment, but that's a very big process and comes with expectations of a return. So that in itself isn't something that you can leap into from day one. And actually, like, even though we've been operating since for a year and a half and incorporated at the beginning of this year, it's not until now that I've really sat down to write a business plan, because it's so hard for you to actually tell what your business does until it starts doing stuff. And you have to know who your audience is by that trial and error and going through it. But in other ways, there has been a lot of support in terms of the community, people lending skills, giving you advice on how to set up like what you need to do. There are resources out there where you can get training and you can connect with other businesses like you. And something that was really like interesting for me was, there are lots of enterprises out there that kind of are set up for people to start small businesses. But production's really different to a normal small business. There's not necessarily a product that you're selling that you're like, we make profit from that and that, we have a thing that we sell, that's it. It's really straightforward. Production is way more complex. And I incorporated some of that world into Cinora so that we had, we were like launching into being a business and have some sort of income. But it means that a lot of the advice that's out there can also be really tailored to people who are running a shop or delivering a service. And we're kind of not really doing either of that. It's a big mixture, Production is on a different wavelength. But it took a wee time, but I did find the people that I needed to find in order to get that help and advice and have a peer group that I can tap into. So yeah, another kind of challenge along the way, but certainly something that is out there if you know where to look for it.
Yes. So you're saying, you work in film, and I was kind of saying, everyone these days does video. What would you say is the key difference between doing video and doing film?
I love this question. And this is one of the ones that when you let me know this was coming up, I was like, wow. Because obviously, like, the terms have changed so much in what they mean and what they are over the years. I mean, originally that described the format, film being celluloid and video being the cassette.
Yeah.
And so it's fascinating because of how interchangeable they've kind of become, but then also maybe in people's minds, like the distinction has this whole set of connotations that have never really been set in stone. They're very flexible, but I think it's a great question. It's not length, because you can watch a YouTube video that's 2 hours long and you can watch a film that's 3 minutes long. And it's not necessarily like defined by where you see it either, because films are accessible in lots of places and videos are appearing in crazy places too. So thinking about it, I thought that it's very much about intent and what's being delivered through like that thing. And even just before I get into the clarity, working in television, most companies, most broadcasters still refer to little segments within a show as VTs. And when I started out, I had no idea what that meant. I was like, VT, what could it stand for? And it stands for videotape. Even though at no point in the process are you actually physically handling a videotape or any sort of like physical footage. That's the term that has stuck. And when I like worked on shows like A View from the Terrace, I was on the VTs. I mean, I was editing digital stuff, but it was a videotape. And I think the intent of what you're creating kind of influences like that terminology and how people feel about it. I would say that what Cinora puts out online, our social content, I'd refer to as video, but our film content is where I would say we invest creatively. We are trying to send a message with our work, and it's very artist-led. And our videos are very informational. Even when they're fun and silly or they're an interview in the subway, that's a video. And for me, that's where those two things separate.
So talk about you've got quite a lot up on the YouTube channel, and it's one thing I'm always interested in kind of anyone who does anything creative is, my background's in data and all that kind of stuff. So I find it fascinating that, so much of that is accessible, but that's terrible for the artist when things don't go as well. Some things hit, some things don't. Looking on yours, there's some videos with big reach and stuff like that, and there's not necessarily a correlation between quality and views. And kind of how do you deal with that mentally?
The way I deal with it is that I absolutely love making them. So whether they are seen by 10 people or thousands, I know that everyone I do, I'm going to be proud of. Like if somebody watched it, whoever they are, then they're going to get like the best form of that I can possibly put together. And I really enjoy it. I enjoy the routine. Setting myself the goal of a video a week to some people seems really insane, especially because I'm working full time and doing other things in the business. And then there's always a video coming out. Although this summer, because I moved house, there's been some gaps. I just really, really enjoy it. I love when I find a subject that I'm so excited to talk about and give my 2 cents on, or I find something that links with something I did before and I'm like, oh, okay, here's an angle that people might not know yet. And I always try to kind of make it like as powerful as possible, as useful as possible to people. The variety is quite wild. I mean, sometimes I'm kind of just like, this TV show is really interesting for whatever reason. Or it can be really hard, like, here is information on how to find a job in Scotland. And it's quite broad, but I do just like really enjoy the whole process of finding it, of recording, and the edit as well. And my channel is all built around the editing style. And just because it's always been my forte in film, and I've always kind of been like, I can edit something really entertaining and good, even if what I record is kind of boring and dull. But it's crazy that there's such a big disparage in views and engagement. Recently, the reason I started doing Clockwork Orange Takes and interviewing people in the subway is because I was interviewing incredible filmmakers with really great things to say and like really useful advice, really fun stories. And then they were getting hardly any views, like way less than what other videos were getting. And I thought it's a shame because this is valuable. This is something that people here would really learn a lot from if they watched. So, I kind of do what great artists do and steal. And I saw other people doing these formats and I thought, hey, if I put them on the subway and I specifically design this to be short form content, to live on Instagram, to live on TikTok and the spaces where people are watching stuff, then this will reach further. And to be fair, the first couple of episodes are quite lighthearted and they're not going too deep into Scottish cinema, but there are some people coming up who are going to like get that conversation, and even just like episode 2, I think the conversation's going to build a little bit more. And so I was like, there you go. I am happy to adjust to sort of like meet the audience where they're at. And I think if you love it, then that kind of process will not bother you at all.
And so with those, are you quite regimented in what you're going to do? So, you film it and then you think, right, it's a 8-minute piece, and then there's going to be 6 60-second clips for Instagram and, a couple of 30-second for TikTok and all that kind of stuff. Or is that,
Yeah, I mean,
that's obviously even more work, I know.
it is, I know. I think because I feel comfortable in the edit, like that has always kind of been, I've got a system when it comes to shooting the long form, cutting it down into shorts. Even the filming style now is designed so that there's enough distance that the landscape video makes sense and the portrait video cut from that doesn't look too close. And now that I have a small team, so Caitlin helps film it and Mumu is going to be doing some edits. It's about sort of like making sure that we're all like in that zone. We all like really love what we do and we have got the passion to sort of make each element work. But yeah, I would say initially, and with lots of other videos on the channel, I just would kind of film and then see where it went. And I think what you get from YouTube is quite a loyal audience once they're established. And you also have a really easy and accessible space. You don't even need to have a login to watch a YouTube video. You can just click a link and it's there. And with other social media, you have to have a profile. And the algorithm has got to find you. And, it's maybe not quite as easy to build a recurring audience. So I'm kind of trying to find the balance of, okay, well, it works really well in this space, but there's not quite as much return in terms of people who are loyal and will watch video to video. So we're kind of, designing it a little bit to work for both spaces and kind of, be in the middle of all of it at the same time.
Yeah, it's crazy kind of what gets picked up sometimes. I had Jay Lafferty on before, and she does Joy Agenda. and she had one with Susie McCabe, and it was talking about brioche buns. Like Susie hates brioche buns, and it got a million views on Instagram. It just
Yeah.
something just clicks, and then bang, it kind of goes.
Some of the strangest things have taken off. So maybe sometimes I can see why. Sometimes I'm just like, I have no idea why that struck a chord with people. I have a wee bit of a policy where I don't dig too deep into the comments, because honestly, like you get such a variety and people really love to voice when they don't like what you've done, and that's going to knock you off your pedestal as well. So may as well just like do what you love.
Yeah.
And hope that the people who love that too are going to find you.
And on those videos, obviously, like you said, in your experience of editing and post production, so they're all, you've got really nicely designed thumbnails and everything else like that. Have you done much kind of A/B testing and all those kind of things?
Yeah, I would say like my thumbnails are, this is an ongoing battle that every single time I make a YouTube video, I spend more than an hour agonizing over how the thumbnail should look. They do let you do A/B testing, which is really good that YouTube provides it, but sometimes it can be hard to come up with two different ideas or even just like figure out how the wording will match if it's this thumbnail versus that thumbnail and this title. And I've done loads of like research and watching videos of people telling me like, oh, you have to have a question in your title, but a statement in your thumbnail and all that kind of dynamic. And you could literally do it forever. And I think generally what has been working is kind of consistently do something and then tweak it ever so slightly just to make it stronger and stronger every time. And the other part of it is like, if you change it too much, then people don't recognize that it's your video. So when you've got those regular people on YouTube and they enjoy watching you week to week, if they don't recognize your video from the thumbnail, then they don't know to click it, and like their expectation isn't there. So oh yeah, it's tough. That part of it is really, really tough. But I would say it's worth putting the time in. And yeah, the struggle of also, a lot of the advice is kind of, make your video very Mr. Beast-esque. Have like the shocked face and like the huge emojis on screen and like really bold colors and stuff. And that's just never, ever suited the content that I made.
Yeah, definitely.
So sometimes you're gonna have to like take the advice with a pinch of salt as well and go with your gut.
So moving from kind of like video and that kind of stuff to film, which is the key kind of area you work on, was that something you've kind of always been interested in, from an early age, film in particular?
Yeah, for sure. Uh, I couldn't tell you when I decided that I wanted to be a filmmaker, but it was always on the cards. I used to tell people at primary school I was going to be a film director when I grew up. What happened in my childhood that made that happen, but it was just a very strong determination. And I think when I went to secondary school and people started sort of talking about their careers, I just had this feeling that like if I didn't try, I would always regret it. And you hear so many adults talk about like, don't do something just because your friends are doing it. And don't do this just because your gran says that's a good career path. And that sunk in. I was like, I absolutely have to give this a bash. Luckily, my mum and dad were quite happy for me to go off and do whatever I wanted to do. And I went to college and then university. And along the way, don't get me wrong, I was not necessarily hesitant, but I just really didn't know what it was going to look like out the other side. But I hoped that I would be able to make work for myself if I gathered the right skills. And after uni, it took 7 years of having a day job in a cinema and working as many like extra shifts and going out and doing like a day's running somewhere, taking on lots of micro creative projects, working on a documentary for 2 years because I only had one free day a week. There was a lot of like push, this is going to happen. And then finally I got to a place where there was enough portfolio work, there was enough connections, and I was in a place where I could take the leap and go freelance. So it was always the main focus. And it's the world has changed quite a lot. I graduated in 2013 and at the time we were using DV tapes at uni, and almost immediately everything went digital. And now people watch YouTube more than they watch TV. And you've got a completely different dynamic with the cinema space as well, and how people consume that. You're always kind of innovating and thinking outside the box and going with the flow, I think.
Something like the Boulder that you've put together. Again, somebody might be watching it in a cinema, surround sound. Someone might be watching it on a little mobile screen. I mean, how do you just kind of say, well, I want to do it as if it's in a cinema and wherever someone watches it, whatever, or do you kind of try and think, well, actually, I got to have something that kind of works well in both?
Yeah, the Boulder was very unique in that respect. Everything I'd worked on before had really been designed for a certain format. So a lot of my editing work was in documentary, and sometimes that would be for cinema, sometimes that would be for television. And so you were always working with that audience and that space, how you were building that sort of file and that sort of structure as well. And because I knew that like the online scene was growing in a different direction and that there was like loads of really, really high quality short films just going in there. And I just made a short film through a funded program, and that was like a good 2-year turnaround of like, it has to be in festivals, it has to go through these certain screenings, it can't be public for a year, and people could only show up and see it at certain times. I really had this kind of desire within me just to make something and put it out. So I was like, first of all, YouTube is where people are watching stuff. Second of all, I'm ready to just make something and get it out into the world. But what happened after we started making it was that like the story was like really, really inspired. Like it kind of hit me one morning after I heard some news about funding cuts to the arts. And I was like, no. And I started texting, calling people and being like, this is outrageous. Like we have to do something. I want to make a film. I'm going to do this. And everybody started jumping in with their anecdotes. And so we wrote this film around the collective experience of being disappointed in the arts. And everyone that came onto the project gave like 1,000%. I kind of thought, okay, I'm making it so that it can go on YouTube. It'll be like a YouTube short. It will be kind of, all right, we'll do our best, but it's not going to be outstanding. And then like the cinematographer came in with the biggest lighting kit I've ever seen in my life. And it was like really intense and so crazy and vivid. And the makeup artist like went really expressive. The actress was like so funny and like giving it like the kind of most expressive performance you could ever ask for. Everyone came to set with their A game. Then in the post-production process, everybody was like really inspired and were like doing all these like crazy experimental things. The composer, initially I was just going to slap like a techno track on it and call it a day. And then a composer came on board and was like, I'm going to write something bespoke for this. And he spent a long time like making every single part of the track line up with what was going on in the film. And yeah, it grew so much bigger than I expected. So I went through a phase where I was like, oh no, should I not put this on YouTube? Is that doing everyone a disservice? But actually, I feel like now a lot of film festivals are quite happy to show something even if it is already public. It used to be that was really gatekept, but it's certainly in the spaces that I wanted to show it, it was not an issue. So it went out online, but it still has festival screenings coming up. And I guess, like not everyone's going to catch it on YouTube. Not everyone's going to stumble across it. So why not have the best of both worlds?
And in terms of filmmaking, in your head, there's obviously the big names you kind of have about kind of what they do, and they will kind of do soup to nuts, kind of write, direct, produce, those kind of things. Do you see kind of, that's what you like doing? Or if someone came to you with a story, you would be happy to shoot it, or even the other way, you'd write it and someone else would film it? Or do you like, obviously you want to feel completely involved and do everything if you can, but there's kind of always a balance.
No, definitely there is a balance. And I actually quite like when I get to work on a project that I'm not writing and directing, because it's fun seeing other people and how they work, and you learn a little bit from it. it's fun getting to be on the inside of like other ideas, and like they trust you to kind of build upon that. So I still do lots of editing for creative films. I was working on one this summer that was like a really powerful personal story of someone's struggle with IVF. And so like just looking at how they shot that, and thinking about the sort of metaphors that they'd pulled through into the work was like really inspiring. And then I was like, oh God, I could do something around this. And like, I think that's lovely being part of the collaborative process. You need to know where you sit. You know, you can't go in being like, I'm a director too, and I'll tell you this. Like, that just would never work. And yeah, even Cinora, we do get people reaching out with scripts. We get people reaching out with projects, and they're interested in collaborating on a production level. Maybe they need some crew, or they need a bit of production management that we can contribute. Maybe they just like need help getting to the next stage of their project. Quite a lot of post-production stuff as well. Like sometimes people shoot something and then they're not quite sure how to shape that up in the edit. And I think it's quite nice when you get to sort of dip in and out of those different stages and use your strengths where they work.
And so I think the Boulder's about 3 minutes or so.
Yeah.
So within that, so what are the kind of levels for these kind of things? Obviously, you've got full on feature film, 90 minutes plus. You've got 3 minutes, and then you kind of got short stories or maybe one-off 30-minute episodes. In your head, are there these kind of benchmarks that you kind of move through, and levels that you go through?
Yes and no. I think that what you make, you kind of like really need the length of what you make should match what it is that you're making for sure. I went to an event recently where people were pitching ideas to a panel. Fascinating. Another great way to get inspiration. It was at the Scottish Screenwriters Festival. And what I found really interesting was that people were pitching TV shows and getting feedback. That's a feature. And it's like, well, a TV show, they're maybe thinking they're going to have about 6 hours to play with to get this story out. And you never have that length of time in a feature. So how are people comprehending the story that you're telling? And there's so many things I watch where I'm like, that would have been fantastic if it was 10 minutes shorter. Like, I would absolutely give it 5 stars if we didn't spend too much time in this place. And so I think like thinking really consciously about how long it takes to tell the story without being gratuitous or without not giving enough. But the thing about like the length is that a lot of it's quite dictated by where you expect people to watch this. So if it's going to be on TV, you'll get given a slot and you'll be told it has to come in at 59 minutes and 40 seconds, you know? But then with film, you can be more flexible. But again, maybe the funding won't allow you to go on too long, or certain film festivals may not have the space to program something extremely long. And so you're maybe putting yourself at risk of being like not selected, because they might think, well, we've got a few films in a similar theme and we could either play 2 or we can play 1. So let's drop that one because it's really long and we'll play these 2. And the same goes on in the shorts world as well. You could have an incredible 20-minute short, but when it comes to festivals and they can maybe only program an hour of short films, they might want to prioritize more than this really great quality individual one. So I think it's very much a lesson in restraint and in purpose, really making the thing the best version, and that includes the length. I mean, I would say when I was younger, I definitely didn't take that advice. And I would just be like, the longer the better. It proves I can make lots of film. But then I look back, I've actually, once, I've maybe done this a couple of times, but there's one project in particular. After I had finished and started sending it to festivals, it had been a good 6 months or so since I'd seen it. And I watched it one day and I was like, I need to cut a minute off of the intro of this film. And I did. I was just like, this entire part can go. It serves no purpose. I just loved the shots and I just thought it was really quirky, but actually the story doesn't start for a good like minute and 20 seconds, and we could have it start at 20 seconds and it'd be a way better film. So yeah.
You talk about editing documentaries. I know you did a video about Shifty, Adam Curtis's.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. I heard him on one podcast saying that Kanye West said he liked it, but it was too long. I thought it's kind of one of the few things I agree with Kanye West on, because it was I enjoyed it, but I preferred some of his other work where it's more, for want of a better phrase, like more of a kind of lecture with video in the background, whereas
Yeah.
this was more video speaking for itself, I guess. But I mean, I was interested in your kind of thoughts on it.
Yeah, because I actually hadn't seen any of Adam Curtis's work where he had done that style, where it's text on screen. But I learned after from the comments that he had actually done this before. And like you, I really enjoyed his sort of lecture with archive and video to support what he was talking about. So it was really different for me, and I felt like it was forcing me to look at the screen. I mean, I'm not usually sitting on my phone at the same time, but just like if you were not paying full attention, then you would not get anything from the show. And I wondered if that was a motivation behind doing the text on screen, but apparently not. Apparently he just prefers it now to doing the narration. But I don't think I found it too long. I really enjoyed each episode. I would say sometimes we returned to something that I wasn't quite sure why it was there. But I trusted that somewhere in the process, he had refined things
Oh
and
yes,
gone,
I mean,
okay, this stays and this doesn't. And just because it didn't hit me, it might hit somebody else. Given like a lot of it takes place like the 80s, 90s, and early noughties. And maybe just some of that stuff just didn't filter through to me at the time. And I just still don't know anything about it now.
I think you've got one episode out at the moment of the Clockwork Orange Takes.
Yeah.
So for people who kind of take that literally, that it's about the Clockwork Orange, what's the kind of background behind that, and have you got many more already in the can?
Yes. So we filmed two people on the same day, the first time that we went out. And it was great because I was kind of like, I have no idea how this shoot is going to go. This could be a disaster. We did do a bit of a sort of recce test run. But the thing about filming on the Glasgow subway is it's a public space. We contacted SPT and they were happy for us to do it, but I was like, we cannot possibly film this when there's lots of public on the subway. We wouldn't even get seats. Like, so we went and did a sort of test and we made sure that the audio was going to be okay. And we kind of tried to think of ways that we could keep the camera steady. That's a work in progress. But when it came to filming, actually, it worked out really, really well. And we kind of did it like super, super early in the morning so that there was less chance of too much public. I'm not going to give away too much in case people start coming on and saying hello, interrupting the filming. But I, as I said, had been interviewing filmmakers and finding what they had to say really fascinating and wanted a way to kind of facilitate conversation in a fun way, in a positive way. And my interviews were just always like some of the lowest views videos on our channel. Sometimes, though, when I posted a vertical short version on social media, it would take off. And I would get thousands and thousands of views, hundreds of comments, people saying stuff like, oh, I want to be interviewed next. I feel like, then why, why is nobody watching the whole thing? If you love this so much, there's an hour of it that you can go and see. And that was quite frustrating. There's a couple in Glasgow who started a series where they basically took the Criterion Closet and put it in a charity shop. And they invited me on, and you basically get to spend £5 on some charity shop DVDs, and it's so much fun. And I thought, you know what? If they can adapt a format to work for them, maybe I can adapt a format to work for me. Contacted the subway, and because it kind of colloquially is known as the Clockwork Orange, the literally the Glasgow subway goes in a circle, and their branding has always been orange. So I'm hoping enough people get that and they know that that's a thing, and they don't just think like, why did you go with that film? It has nothing to do with Scotland. It has nothing to do with what you're talking about. That's where it comes from. And I thought it was nice that it was a cinema reference, even though like that particular part doesn't have a place within what we actually capture in film. But I kind of copied a little bit of the film poster, the font and stuff like that, and brought it in just as an homage. And hey, maybe someone out there will be like, oh, I love Clockwork Orange, the film. Let's watch this. And then, they're pleasantly surprised that it's actually just a fun conversation about film on the subway.
Yeah. And with those, I mean, it probably helps, I guess, given your experience, but how much time does it take to edit, put on images that fit with the film? Because I think, that's probably, those are the kind of things that make a difference between just a straight video and then you're overlaying things on top, giving more information and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's the time consuming part for sure. Organizing it takes no time at all. We just make sure that we've got a schedule for the day. We go out and film, and we basically, everybody so far, we've kind of met them at their nearest stop and gone around the subway and let them off at their own stop again. And that's how long it takes to film. It's really, really concise, and it's a great process. And then the edit is really long. So with the first episode, obviously I was kind of still finding my feet, but I spent a good few hours just getting that first cut of like what actual parts of the interview are we putting in together here. Then, and Chris, like, he was a great guest because he so thoroughly knows cinema. But my God, he was dropping references left, right, and centre. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have to put in every one of these films. Look up the poster and like save it and pop it in. And yeah, it was, that is the hardest part, but it makes it fun. And that's like the kind of magic of the like watching an episode or seeing the clip. It keeps you engaged, and it is worth that extra effort. But this is one of the reasons why I basically brought in another editor to Cinora, because like it is beginning to get to the point where like we can make the content fast enough, but we can't edit it fast enough to go out. And it's just, editing is always like a really large part of every project, so got to give it a bit more time.
One thing you have on your website is the filmmaker's game plan. So you've kind of got, I guess, with your experience, not every project is exactly the same, but there are certain beats you have to hit, I guess.
Yeah.
I just want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. So basically, through all the projects I was working on, kind of collecting a bit of knowledge from projects that I was just an editor in, or maybe part of the process, a researcher. I was doing a lot of work with like the BBC and then independent production companies, did the project where I was funded. And every time it was a completely different system of paperwork and management, and like people were just sort of finding templates online and going, this'll do. So I started basically kind of collecting the ones I thought were best and pulling them all together. And I had like a big spreadsheet, and I'd be like, every project that I started, I'd say to the producer or whoever I was working with, all the stuff is here. And like, we don't have to go searching for templates. We don't have to be working from all these different versions. But even when I showed up to the Boulder, there was someone who had a script version from a couple of times ago. And I was like, there's got to be a better way. Like, obviously things get lost in email chains. And even like with all that preparation and sending everybody the spreadsheet, there was still hiccups. And I was like, yeah, there's got to be a better way. And the filmmaker's game plan, basically I took all the things I collected and I was like, right, how do I make this into like a totally foolproof space where your project lives? You put in all of your information. It helps you identify what you're missing. Like things like call sheets and release forms. Like you just click a button and it draws in all the information that it's already got and it makes one for you. And like it just keeps everything consistent and the same. If I decide that I'm changing the name of the film, I change it in one box and all of the other paperwork is now up to date. And it just honestly grew out of the necessity for needing to have a lot more management and coherence. And I started basically building it as a product, but it wasn't initially going to be. It was genuinely just like, I'm going to use this from now on in my own projects. This is how I'm going to keep things going. But I met with a few people and told them about it, and they were like, you should put this on sale. And I was like, oh, right, okay, fair enough. And, Cinora was making productions and using this. And I thought, well, what if we also had that kind of shop element? I guess, where we offer it at a price that's like really affordable for filmmakers. Once you buy it, you can use it on as many projects as you want. And it is just there to help you organize everything, help you make your product or your project much, much easier. And yeah, we launched and we got a great response. We kind of also offer a course around it if you're maybe newer to filmmaking and you know this part is necessary, but you've maybe not been through it yet. And the first time we ran that, we had a really great response as well. And the group that came in and kind of learned all their skills, like, it's quite exciting because now they're like going off and filming. And I'm like, oh my God, this time last year, I was just like frustrated that I couldn't manage my own production. And now other people are out there using the same thing to make theirs happen. So it's been a really lovely journey. And I'm really, really glad that the people I met along the way kind of encouraged me to go in these directions and make it into a bigger thing than what it was originally.
You said earlier about merch as well on the site. So I mean, within all this, how hard is fundraising for stuff? You know, obviously you've got the regular stuff, which is a paid project, and you know that's all great. But then something like the Boulder, there's not necessarily a financial return on it. Obviously, you don't. You know, there's always this balance between you do something because you love to do it, but if there's no money anywhere, eventually you're going to run out of being able to do it.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And I think it's probably the biggest problem with filmmaking in Scotland. There isn't that big return from audiences here. You know, like, we don't really have space in our cinema where income or, you know, ticket sales are coming directly back to Scotland all the time and fueling more creativity and being put back into projects. In short film, there isn't any way that that would ever happen. Like, people aren't really paying to see shorts. They're maybe paying to go to a festival, but that festival then kind of, they need the money to keep running. So it's not very common that the filmmaker makes a return on a short. You're making it because you're cutting your teeth or you have a story to tell that fits that length. You're happy for that to get into the world and not make your profit. But when it comes to features, it's just so much effort to make and not have that return. But I am learning at the moment that you know, it's really inconsistent in terms of like what you can get back out of it. And that is something that, like with Cinora, I want to try and nurture more of a audience for and a more of an appetite for Scottish cinema. Because if you go to the cinema and see a Marvel movie, then Disney makes a profit and the cinema you went to gets a tiny, tiny wee cut from the ticket sale, a lot of the cut from the food sale, but not like there's nothing going back to the people who work in cinema here or are making anything that is for people here. And I mean, like, there are so many incredible Scottish stories portrayed in film. And a lot of the Scottish films that you'll have seen over the last like 5 years, 10 years, they're quite often a co-production with another country that does have a bit of a better infrastructure for returning that money and getting audiences into the cinema to see it. I think that's really where we need to build the future, honestly, because if you just keep making stuff, no one sees it and the money never comes back, then what are we doing it for? You know, I mean, we're doing it because we love art, but we're also just like, if nobody sees it, then why make it?
Absolutely. So one thing I quite often talk about within, you know, talking to comedians, talking to musicians, authors, whatever, is AI and the rise of AI. And, you know, generally, I completely understand why. Most people I speak to are quite negative on it. I was just interested in your thoughts, and are there any kind of positives that it kind of brings in, especially around kind of maybe editing and stuff like that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's the most complicated conversation that you can have at the moment. It's really not straightforward at all. I mean, there is so much use of AI, even where you least expect it. And I guess, like, simple things like in the edit, I will use tools to like take away background noise or stabilize. And all of that requires like the program like learning more about how the footage sounds or what it looks like and making those adjustments. That kind of stuff I feel like has been around for so long and is like there to assist you and to help you do your job properly. If you're employing anybody to sit and stabilize your footage or like sit and like try and pick out like really precise noises, like that is a painful job that I'm not sure anybody is really excited to do in the first place. But when it comes to generative AI and this whole kind of side of it where it's just like, oh, type in a prompt and you'll just get something out, I feel like there's a lot of different like opinions and influences out there, and it's also like super unclear at the moment like how successful it even is. A lot of places are over exaggerating the contribution that their AI makes, and there have been quite a few articles recently about how companies are finding the AI that they've spent millions, if not billions of pounds setting up is letting them down in such a wide range of ways. In filmmaking, it feels like they're you know, you've got that divide of the like really commercial productions, the big crowd pleasers, popular films, and then your kind of art films, your Oscar winners that nobody seems to have heard of and like are making a very modest return. And, you know, in the popular space, nobody gives two hoots if you've used AI. It doesn't even register to people that that's present. And in the other space, it's massively controversial. It jeopardizes the integrity of your film. People are campaigning that Oscar nominations shouldn't include any AI whatsoever. And I can completely understand. And I do lean more towards the, listen, if we're going to call ourselves creative and we're going to say that like we've made this like hugely beautiful piece of art, then own it and actually make it. Don't rely on something to fill those gaps. And certainly, like, as I say, the tools within that world that are going to like do a little job for you to make things a little bit easier, that's not a big concern. But like full-blown changing a performance or like generating part of the image using AI really is kind of cheating in a way. And it just comes across disingenuous at the moment. There's such massive trust issues with AI, and rightly so. It just feels like it's attacked the creative industries, and that already was a space that was struggling in other ways. We did not need this coming, and we do not welcome it at all.
No, absolutely. You talked a little bit about community earlier. I was just wondering kind of what kind of community there is in Scotland in particular around both in terms of film, but just creativity in general. So, I mean, you know, do you get to see other things, you know, whether that's comedy, music, whatever it may be, you know, how you kind of, like you said, get inspired from things as well?
I would say that it's like a really, really creative place, and there's so much happening. It's just perhaps quite localized. And recently I've been realizing that like a lot of things that I thought were hugely successful were actually successful in Glasgow. And nobody in Edinburgh's heard of it. Nobody outside of the Central Belt has heard of it. And that's been kind of interesting because I think that sometimes the perception of what people are up to far exceeds the reality. That's a good thing in terms of like, you know, building the image and making ourselves like really stand out in the world stage, which kind of needs to happen for us to get that whole circular system I'm talking about, and like, you know, be proud of who you are and support Scottish things. But within the kind of community that I'm part of, like it's so small in a way when you think about it. Every time I go to an event, there's a million people there that I know, and we all catch up and oh, you've got a film this year, brilliant. But then you take a step back and you realise that like, okay, but within Scotland, that's maybe only like a few thousand people. And we're always all going to the same events, and we're maybe just a little bit closed off to the rest of the world where things are maybe like on just a way bigger scale. And I think what the film community and the creative community here are really, really good at is supporting each other and like having each other's back, sharing like what we're up to, holding the ladder down behind us to make sure that like everybody's getting a fair chance. There's almost everybody is happy to have a quick chat about how their project went or what kind of things to avoid, and like helping you if you're going through that stage as well. But sometimes we just hit a wee bit of a ceiling because it's like, oh, okay, but we're always like kind of working within that same network and we need to push out a little bit more. It's hard to do. And I think one of the things that you had mentioned about this going in was that sort of notion of like, do you have to leave Scotland in order to get more out of this? Do you have to be London centered? And unfortunately, it's a bit of a trope that in order to be successful, you have to leave. But so many here are fighting back against that. And there's a big movement at the moment of like, people are just so ready for the next phase of filmmaking here that they're making it happen no matter what. If you haven't got the grant funding that you went for, if you're not able to access the government funding because of criteria, then you find another way to make it happen. And like in the last few years, this has erupted, and I feel like there are so many like really high quality independent feature films being made for very small budgets. And the whole point is that like filmmakers are like, no, I can prove to you that I am just as good as what you can get out of a London crew. And we can do it cheaper, although we want more. Next time we expect to be paid properly. And that I'm really, I'm so into that at the moment. And this is all the people that I want to like interview and gather accounts from and share that knowledge. I'm dubbing it the Scottish New Wave. I can't quite tell if it's caught on with other people, but I keep saying that term in the hopes that it's going to catch on. That's like my fetch from Mean Girls. I'm like, it'll happen. Other people will start using it. They will.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of yes, London being the be all and end all. I had comedian on, and she moved up to London to kind of be more in the scene, but that meant her costs went through the roof. So she then had no real time to kind of do all those kind of things of
Yeah.
networking and everything else that you get there, and so it's just it's hard everywhere.
Yeah. There's someone I know who, in my early years running and stuff like that, moved to London and lived out of their car for several years. They would come home to see their parents and stuff like that every now and then, and I'm sure they managed to figure out how to like maybe stay at someone's house every now and then like that. But like they literally lived in their car for a very long period of time, and I was just like, I just couldn't make that compromise. If you can't get paid enough to survive there and you're not set up already, like how much of your life are you willing to compromise to make that happen? And I was like, I think I'll stay in Scotland and do what I can.
That makes sense. And in terms of future plans for the next, let's say, 6 to 12 months, is that already mapped out, or are there kind of some bits and some goals and some possibles?
I literally turn to my partner just about every day and go, I had an idea. And he's like, we can't do them all. I'm dreaming big. And I think that's a good, healthy thing to do because it encourages you to like really think through how can you make that happen. I mean, a lot of filmmaking is that like, you want to have the finished product in your hands. Well, you're going to have to go through a year of all these different tasks, a lot of which you don't really want to do. And so with Cinora, like, starting Clockwork Orange Takes, and the success of that online. I mean, Chris apparently got recognised in a nightclub bathroom from the clip. So I was like, "Woo, we've made it!" And then I was teaching a class yesterday, and one of the students was like, "I saw you on that clip," and I was like, "Excellent! This is definitely the right direction." That is absolutely going to be like a big focus for the next wee while because it is entertaining. I can get some of my educational filmmaking stuff out in that as well. It's fun to do. I really love doing it. But it is all, I mean, that isn't going to have any sort of return on it really, other than people engaging with people and giving something like really lovely and in return, like building a bit of loyalty and trust in our brand. And from there, there's lots of other similar projects. There's commercial projects, and there's teaching, which is a big, big part of Cinora, in order to help people engage with art, build their own films, or learn a little bit more. And yeah, I feel like at the moment in Scotland, the education space in film is also going through this really big transformation. We've just made it a subject in schools. So we are going to have a lot of filmmakers in the near future. And so I'm really building on that and like trying basically to take Cinora into a space where we sustainably kind of like teach and coach and like give people the necessary skills to be creating and building up that community. So we've got lots of social and commercial projects, and this is going to help us feed into our creative projects and make the films that we want to make. I'm working on a documentary which started filming in February. Because a documentary, it's kind of like you have this big burst of production and then you pause until the next contributor is ready and you've got all the other bits and pieces in place. So it's a long process, but it's a really fun one and a really personal one. It's all about what happened to Scots language. Because when I was wee, it was this thing that you were disciplined for using, and it was not to be spoken in schools. And as you entered the professional world, you had to start dropping all of the Scots from your vocabulary and the sound of it from your voice. And I'm probably one of the like most intense examples of this happening. And I discovered footage of myself when I was a child, and I sound so broadly Scottish. I've got this really like Ayrshire sound, and I was like, wow, it really worked on me, like the stripping. And now, this year, Scots was legally recognised as a language in government. And there's been this focus on reintroducing it into everyday life, bringing it back into the school curriculum and making professional work in Scots. You get TV shows now that are looking to basically utilise Scottish writers and bring the language back out in that way. And so that massive shift for me was something that I had to unpack. I was like, in my lifetime, and I'm not even that old, this has gone from do not touch to, oh my God, it's going to die. Let's get back on the bandwagon. And obviously there's a similar story with Gaelic in a slightly different sense. You get things like the kneecap effect, where because they're so successful, people in Ireland have been learning Gaelic again, or Gaelic. And so my documentary really centres on the personal journey of Scots for me, but also the wider angle of like that transitional period for Scotland and how it feels to be going through a reconnection with culture. So that's something I'm really looking forward to in the next 12 months, finishing and getting out into the world.
And so, yes, you were kind of saying, you might have to pause it and everything else like that. Is it sometimes better to have a deadline? If someone said to you, this needs to be out by December.
It can be helpful because then you definitely put the pressure on yourself to wrap things up. And with my previous documentary that I was funded for, there was a deadline. I knew when I needed to schedule in all the shooting, and that did sort of like help like manage it and make sure that it was all done by a certain time. But it was a slightly different project where I had more access to the contributors I was filming, and it wasn't as big as what I'm going to do with my Scots documentary. So I was speaking to someone yesterday who was like, actually, sometimes the documentary or the story could have been better if I had more time. If I hadn't had to finish it by this point, I would have also got this person in their opinion, and I would have got this event in that doc too, and it would have made it stronger. And so I was kind of like, yeah, it's a delicate balance. There's either too much freedom or not enough, and hopefully you sit somewhere in the middle. I'm quite disciplined though, and I don't like to leave things too long. Certainly, like I was telling you earlier with my first documentary, it was like a 2-year turnaround, I think. We filmed it all at once, which was the crazy thing. It was just that the edit was so intense that we had to chip away at it really slowly. And that's difficult because then, like 2 years later, you're looking at interviews and someone says, so last year we set up the community Wi-Fi, and you're like, oh, they didn't set it up last year. That was 3 years ago now. We're gonna have to edit this so that they don't say that part, but still keep what they're talking about. So it can be tough. It can be really tough. But with this one, I am definitely gonna get to, because it's relevant now. And that's the other thing. Like if it doesn't come out for another few years, then the whole kind of moment of the Scots transformation is not in the same place anymore. So yeah, you got to kind of put that pressure on yourself a little bit too.
Yes. And so from a commercial side of things, do you have in your mind that, whether BBC Scotland or whoever else would pick it up, or, do you put those feelers out already, or do you wait until you're 85% done? I mean, how's that going to work?
I would say it's absolutely got to be in your mind from day one. Like when you go into making the project, you have to think about where does this fit in the world? Because if you can't identify who will watch it and where, then you will really struggle at the end to find those people, because you're kind of always have to make it with them in mind. There's an element of it though where I've been kind of given advice that like, oh well, if you weren't in it and you cast somebody more famous to do the sort of like leading of the documentary, then it could sit here on this channel. And I was like, yeah, but it is a personal story. And I don't think that's how I want to tell this. So yeah, there's a struggle there as well of like, maybe you could be guaranteed something lucrative if you compromise a lot on how it's made. And I'm quite heart set on this is about what's happened in my life, and the archive I've got of myself. And it's not that I want to be front and center on the Scots campaign. Like I just feel like it would be so much more authentic if it came from someone who's like going through this journey here now, and not kind of shoehorned into, oh well, they can present things really well, so just let them take it. That was quite a kind of weird and difficult decision. But I still, even now, I'm really hyper focused on where's it going, who's it for, and along the way of filming it, there's also this like real presence in your mind of which moments from this are shaping it the most. With documentary, you sometimes get to the end and realize that there's like a even more powerful story within what you captured that's maybe not the original thing that you set out to do. So yet sometimes it can completely change and then go in a different direction to where you set out to be. That is a whole different skill set beyond being technical, beyond being organized, that you just got to go through and see what happens.
Yes, I can imagine, like you said, the focus is on Scots, but you talk about Gaelic as well. And then all of a sudden you could go down all sorts of indigenous languages all over the world and kind of,
Yeah. That's been something really lovely that's come up when I speak to people about it, that actually people in Catalonia have a really similar experience with Catalan and Spanish. People in Belgium experience this with Flemish. And I was like, oh, yeah, of course. There's people everywhere have had this like same sort of language suppression, and it leaves you in this weird state of like mismatched identity. So yeah, it's been really cool talking about it to people, because then you kind of get more little pieces of the puzzle.
Thanks to Ash for coming on the podcast. You can find out more details in show notes about Cinora and where to watch their short films and Clockwork Orange Takes. If you enjoyed this, check out our other episodes with a variety of comedians, musicians, authors and others in creative industries. Thanks for listening.